Stop laughing. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's great. It's my first Vidcon ever, and it's so great to see all of you. Yeah. Oh, thanks. And it means so much that you all came to this kind of heady philosophical talk in the midst of all this other crazy shit. So, yeah, without further ado, I think we'll start. So my name is Chris. I go by Chan. If you watch the internet, that's what I go by and what the internet calls me. I'm also a PhD candidate at the University of Washington, and I teach anthropology there. I am also the director of content at Cuts, which is a little digital studio that you may or may not know of. I'm sure you've watched one of our videos once or twice before. Okay. So yeah, follow me here. These are my socials. If you want to contact me for any reason, I'm super open and interested to talking with any of you at any level at which you're creating. I think it's much more interesting to talk to people earlier in their career than later. Yeah, and then finally, we'll be using this hashtag that Vidcon told me to use. It's hashtag comments Vidcon19. So if you have comments or questions, we'll check there. Although I don't know if anyone's actually moderating it, so forget that. I don't see anybody moderating today, so why don't you instead just ask your questions at the end, and you can come up or something. But I've saved about half of this talk for questions, because I think that's much more interesting than me talking. Okay. All right. Here's my main message. It's pretty simple. It's that you should read the comments. Okay? So there's this ancient internet proverb, and I think most of you generally adhere to it or abide by it. It's don't read the comments under any circumstances for any reason. We say don't read the comments because it's the darkest and cruelest side of humanity. It's the most toxic and awful content that is out there in the world. Armed with anonymity, people say the cruelest and the most cutting and hateful things. In the comments, we find trolls, we find copy pasta, we find a shit ton of spam, we find bots, and we find angry mobs with pitchforks repeating the same things over and over again, mobilizing and eviscerating discourse. Okay, so the preponderance of these things is the reason why we are constantly telling each other and telling our moms and telling our friends not to read the comments. By repeating this idea, though, I think we are missing out on something pretty important. And that's that the comments are something that are actually an opportunity. That the content is actually not just the video, but it's the dialogue that happens between the audience and the people making the video. And that we should work just as hard as cultivating the amazing comment section with vivid and vivacious discourse, with vibrant dialogue, as we spend time producing our videos. And that actually we shouldn't measure our success with views or with watch time. I think that's a trap. We should measure our success by the kinds of quality that we find in our comment section. It's a work in progress. There's lots of trolls out there. So here's a comment I quite like. There it is. I'm just going to skip ahead for a second. This is my former student, Joe. He, if you can't tell, is sitting on a toilet. And he's experiencing the bidet for the first time. And we filmed it in slow motion, 3,000 frames per second. And when I say we filmed it, I mean his face. So this comment says, the first person says, are you willing to tell me people took their pants off in front of the camera team just so that they could splash their ass with water? And then Bo, down below, says, hi, you must be new to this channel. This is indeed very normal. Okay. He's right. So that channel, as I mentioned before, is Cuts. When I said you might have seen some of these things, you may have seen one of these things out there on your feed if you aren't subscribed to us already. We've had Grandma smoking weed, my pride and joy, my baby, 100 Years of Beauty, and then of course our very viral and successful drinking games, Truth or Drink and Beer Pong. And we also have Hi Ho, which is our kids channel, where we, I don't know, I'm pretty sure if you go out into the world and you just collect 5 people, 3 of them have watched Kids Try. That's probably the flagship, that's the mothership on Hi Ho. So I have an activity for you because I mentioned I teach a college class and this is what I do. So there, you came with people or you came alone. In either case, turn to the person next to you and tell them in one sentence why you create.
I create to make the world a better place. Nice job.
Can I give you a second to wrap up? Do you need more time? Okay, you need more time. I'll give you like a long ass 30 seconds.
That's not right.
Doing nothing. You can
Okay, and I hope you introduce yourself if you don't know each other. Okay, so who here started creating content because they loved the idea of optimizing the text on a thumbnail so that it would collect more views? And who amongst us here loves analytics so much? Okay, you do. Okay, God bless you, we need you. You should talk to us later. I think most of us, though, weren't drawn to content because we liked measurements. And we didn't love best practices. So I don't think, we craft captivating or interesting or personal or whatever stories because we love those best practices to death. And we love keeping up with the industry. I think we do that because we love telling stories. Those tasks are, of course, important, and we need people in the world to do them, and people are really good at it. They're like engineers or artists. But we also need artists that create and dream and envision things we have never seen before in the world. And there's no best practice to tell you what to make that's new. Okay? So here's some tips, and these all have to do with the comments. And my message to you, just to reiterate it one more time, is the content is the comments. The comments are the content. We should look at the comments to tell us more accurately if we're successful or not. Okay? So I'll tell you a little bit how I became a creator. And it's a funny story because I'm pretty new at it, actually. If I'm being totally honest and transparent with you, I wasn't obsessed with YouTube in the way that so many people here are. I barely used YouTube outside of a cooking tutorial here and there. And yeah, I didn't take that format as seriously as I know a lot of people here do. I think you all have won me over to that side. I thought of internet video as a kind of candy, so a kind of confection that's mass-produced, made for mass audiences, that isn't necessarily good for you, that supplies a hit of dopamine, but in the end is never going to satisfy that sweet tooth. Okay? But I've seen a lot of exceptions, and then I started reading the comments, and now I think a lot differently about it. Before I was working at Cut, I was a serious academic anthropologist grad student, aka broke. And I was really interested in ethnography, which is this idea that we go out into the world and we study people and we ask them what they care about. We document the details of their lives in the richest texture that we can. So we try to give ourselves and our readers a sensory idea of what someone else's world is like. And I always thought a YouTube video can't possibly do that. It's so short, and honestly, most of the content that I see on YouTube is so loud and shouty and distilled into such small, discrete units. Okay, but I don't think that's actually true now either. I started doing freelance work for 100 Years of Beauty. So that's kind of my entree into this world that I feel like a guest in and a visitor in, that you all are all native to. This video is 100 Years of Beauty Iran, and I think that a comment in this video changed my life and sent me on this path to the stage to talk to all of you. At Cut, I resisted every job offer they gave me while I was freelancing. I didn't want to work at Cut. Actually, I thought I was more serious than that. It turns out I'm not. And it actually turns out that the work we do, even if it's the people sitting on the days, can have a a serious effect in the world. And we know now that algorithms that suggest content to us on YouTube and elsewhere have real material consequences for the stability of our social lives. Okay, so that is something we should all take very seriously. And yeah, we do need to start at those videos of people using bidets. Okay, so in this video, 100 Years of Beauty Iran, Sabrina models 11 looks, and kind of shows us the waxing and waning between Islamic conservatism and secularism throughout the decades. In the 1980s, we see that the effects of the 1979 Iranian Revolution mean that she's wearing chador, I think. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about the name of that garment, but it's a full body covering. Whereas in the decade before, in the 70s, she looks very cosmopolitan, almost European, very groovy, like for Farrah Fawcett or something. Okay? So here are my tips for you when you're making your video. Okay? One is to frame every video as a question that demands to be answered, and a question that can't easily be answered by one person, and that requires dialogue, debate, and discourse to actually answer. Okay? 100 Years of Beauty capitalizes on, let's say, this flow of visitors that come through the suggestion algorithm because they've watched beauty tutorials and beauty time lapses in the past. Okay? And the thing about this advertising and marketing regime that we live in, and I'm talking about Google, people that advertise to you on YouTube, don't think that those young women that like fashion and beauty are smart enough to care about anything but that. What 100 Years of Beauty did, and what shocked me and surprised me, is that actually these 14 and 15-year-old women, maybe 10, 11, or 12, yes, they go to Sephora. Yes, they do like to contour. They're interested in eyeshadow and things like that. But yes, they can also talk about and have discourse and debate about the geopolitics of the Middle East in the 70s. They can talk about what it means for women to wear a hijab and debate the merits of autonomy and resilience in the face of something like a mandatory hijab in Iran. And we saw all of these kids basically having these very sophisticated adults, intellectual conversations in a place where they were asked only to consume one kind of content, which is people putting on makeup. It turns out you can put on makeup and think too. Okay? I was shook by that. In the comments, people didn't just say that they liked a look or didn't like a look. They didn't talk about their preferences or anything like that. They wrote paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. In those paragraphs, some of them did research. Some of them contacted their grandparents and asked what Iran was like at the turn of the Iranian Revolution. Okay? Other people asked questions because they literally didn't know what things meant. As a result, what we have here is this new generation of young women that are having a sophisticated, reasoned debate about a really complex and challenging topic because nobody ever asked them to do that, except for this comment section. And they asked each other. By the way, if you were trying to look up the best practices for how to make a video go viral, I promise you it wouldn't tell you to bring up the Iranian Revolution. Okay? Here's my next tip for you. It's that content lives on in the lives of the viewer. Okay? If we are to take the comments seriously, which I know this is an audacious claim because we think of the comments as trash, then we really need to radically rethink about what our format is. Is our format a video file? Does it have a duration and then start and a finish? The video lives online and you can comment on it and dislike and like it. Isn't that content too? Okay, our format can no longer just be that video file that's uploaded and discreetly can start and finish. I think we actually need to think of it as a boundary artifact. It's a thing that mediates relationships between all of us. Okay? Not only does it mediate the relationship between me and all of you that watch our content, but all of the people that tell their friends and their family and their coworkers and their lovers to watch something or not watch it or hate watch it or what have you. It's embedded and ensconced in the lives of the people that are watching it. It becomes a conversation. It might be used to make small talk with your office crush. It might be used to break the ice on a first date, for example, right? that video is actually embedded in millions of people's lives. And that's something we don't measure, just FYI, nor can we. So a lot of people, by the way, this is Black parents explain the police to their kids. It's one of the videos I think we're all the most proud of. A lot of people tell me, why do your videos have to get so political all the time? A lot of commenters say, like, I came here to watch people drinking and stripping. I don't need your politics. Those comments, yes, I accept that that's a perspective that people have, but I have to laugh because it's the same screens that bring us images of Ferguson and Charlottesville, concentration camps at the US-Mexico border, of women's activism in the face of sexual assaults and the bureaucratization of sexual violence. That same screen brings us your slime tutorial. Okay? It's in the same advertising market as that slime tutorial and your cooking videos, and your college library pranks, and your tasty videos. Okay? It is all part of the same apparatus. It was already going to be political. Okay, so the honest thing, I think, when you're making content is to consider that it is a political boundary artifact that has a life in the world and lives for the people that consume it. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting so, like, authoritarian. Okay. You can disagree in the Q&A, I won't be heard. Okay. Content's not discrete, I don't think. In this case, we filmed a really generous set of Black families that shared with us a really intimate moment. And that's a conversation that, as we learned, happens in every Black household in the United States. It's the talk that we don't get. We get the birds and the bees talk, okay? In the Black household, you also get this talk, which is how to deal with the police. They were so generous enough to share this moment with us. I know, like, Marina and I were filming, operating the camera in there, just crying our eyes out. And these folks were giving their kids really practical advice for how to deal with the police. That's really just what it was, cut and dry. When we filmed it, we saw children as young as 5 empathize with their parents, question their own mortality, considered and understood viscerally that their bodies were marked as different in the world. And of course, surprise, it ushered in a slew of comments that chose, rather instead, having watched it, to deny that police brutality exists and that white supremacy exists. And they were quick to espouse really boring cliches about how those fears were overblown and how these parents were indoctrinating their children with a leftist agenda. I think those comments are really boring, but we should expect them anyways, naturally. But we also found, in the face of all that, radically profound comments, and comments that outlined real relationships that our viewers are having with their friends and family. And so, like, a lot of people describe how they had this talk when they were kids. So a lot of people described how they were planning on having this talk with their kids as they got older. The comment that sticks out the most to me is from a white woman who was writing on Facebook about how she and her adopted Black child would need to have this conversation at one point, but she had never had the tools to begin to have it. And this video gave her something to think about, and this is where the tea is. She tagged all of her family members in it. All of her family members came back in and started arguing and debating and having actual discourse about what it means to be a Black child in this world, and the borders, the boundary lines between living as a white person and a Black person. Okay? That conversation really inspired me, even if it was confrontational. But the idea that we should use content to initiate and instigate conversations that are happening in the world and make a material difference is one thing I hope, at least, that you leave here with. Okay. There's a philosophical problem that I think when it comes to creating content that we don't really stop to think about. By the way, this is a rabbi, a priest, and an atheist smoking weed together. Yeah. That's what we do. It is a philosophical problem here when it comes to creating content. And it's that in the daily grind in this industry, at its upper echelons and at the base of its workforce, we don't really ever stop to consider that the video doesn't just need to be loud, it doesn't just need to beg for your attention, it doesn't need to just get the views, but it also has to be mass produced, short amount of time, that we should pump out as much as possible. But the problem is that overinflates the value of human attention, because people can only consume so much, and if they're only consuming garbage, that's really sad, and I don't want to live in that world. We don't need more distraction in the world, okay? The video can be distracting when you need it to be distracting, when you have 5 minutes on the bus, or your barista made the coffee wrong, so you have extra time to watch some extra content to fill your day. Okay? But we don't actually need more distraction. The thing I think we really need is more contemplation. Contemplation is different. Contemplation is sitting and thinking and pondering about something larger than yourself. Okay? I'm actually really interested in how desperately this world needs that contemplation. Once we've scrolled beyond the video and once we've closed the tab, are we done thinking about the thing that was in that video? Or does it animate something within us and change us in some way? Does it make us rethink something? Does it influence our attitudes or our actions? Does it materialize in the ways we relate to each other? And that's something I'm very interested in. Writing on the verge of fascism in Europe in 1930, there's a little philosophy history for you, so you can promptly forget it if it's boring. Walter Benjamin described how art has a kind of aura around it. Like when it's crafted by human hands and human vision, it makes the hairs on the back of our neck stand up. It stops us in our tracks. It inspires a moment of contemplation. And that's why we go to places like Rome and we look at the Pietà, and that brings us to tears, right? He said the danger, though, is in the age of mechanical reproduction, when we turn that work of art and its aura, we take that work of art and reproduce it, it annihilates the aura. Okay? So when it becomes a postcard or a fridge magnet, instead it becomes a kind of distraction, a distraction that's just cluttering up the viscera of everyday life. Okay? And he said that actually that's the danger and what makes authoritarianism possible. What's possible now, in the moment where we accept that we're passive consumers that only just consume and watch distracting shit, is that we haven't stopped to think and have critical discourse, not with ourselves and not with each other. Okay? So when I say I'm tired of seeing iterative and boring things on the internet, I mean that in the one sense I'm literally bored, but I'm also disturbed and worried. Okay? And I'm disappointed when I see colleagues or other people out there in the world reproducing the same video over and over again mechanically, eviscerating the aura. So I think we need to pay attention to the comments pretty closely. They're a litmus test of this danger. Here's a rhetorical question for you. Do you think that we need to inspire more contemplation in this world amongst our viewers, or easily forgettable, disposable, and perfectly functional pieces of distraction? And do we look for that in the comments when we make our videos? Here's another tip. Give people the things they need. Okay. So I love this video, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's one of my favorites. It's like every human emotion condensed in one little bottle of whiskey. So the setup is, this is Brian, he's standing up, and that's his mom, and that's his girlfriend, and they're meeting for the very first time, and they're all very nervous about it, but they're drinking, and we're filming them, as one does. In the attention economy, videos are a commodity like any other, and commodities by their very nature must promote themselves as having these supernatural qualities. So that razor, or that Coke, or this phone, or whatever the fuck, has to have some kind of aura around it that suggests some illusion that it will respond to some deep need that you have deep in your soul. The problem is, though, we know that Coke can isn't actually going to satisfy that. Okay? The funny thing is about video, though, is that we can actually produce a commodity, a video, that does do that. What do people need in 2019? I have a feeling it's actually the same thing as people have always needed, but sorely lack and are missing, which is the feeling of human connection, the sense that we're not alone, the feeling that we matter, that we have heartbreak and other people have heartbreak, and that's okay. That we want to be and we need to be validated, and need to be held. These are very basic things that you actually have to go to a lot of therapy to discover. But really, like, we can provide these opportunities or capture them and let people know that they do matter and that they are valid. And yeah, that's one reason why I'm so drawn to the comments. That's exactly the place where people tell us, I didn't know I needed this, but I did. Okay, so we have some real talk if you're a creator. And I'm like, I don't want to see any more call to actions that are like, if you like my video, leave a comment. The thing about that is, yeah, like we are trained to teach our audience to engage, and that matters, that's important. Okay? But if it becomes rote like that, we're not really doing our job. In fact, the entire video should be a call to action. It should be an invitation for somebody to think, okay, I have to say something now. Make a video that's so tantalizing and powerful that the viewer must absolutely comment. And their comment at the core should be about the perceptions of their own experience, how they see this world through the lens of this video, and how they react to it. Okay? Your video needs to compel them, so the viewer should say, I, with my own subjective experience, must chime in and tell my side of the story. We filmed this piece. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like the aging video where we use special effects, makeup to age this newlywed, or like a soon-to-be newlywed couple through these big milestones. So we flash forwarded through 30 years of their life at a time. Everyone that watches it cries like a baby. If you want to make someone cry, I would recommend it. Yeah, some commenters were newlyweds themselves, or recently engaged, or married. And they wrote about how they saw the future and their worries. Some people had been married for a long time, but one of them might have been terminally ill. And they were saying, I would completely do this, if only so that I could see my loved one's age, and think about all those years that would be foreclosed to us. The most gut-wrenching comment that I read about a woman who had a daughter, like a teenage daughter, and they wanted to do it because her mom had a degenerative ocular disease. She was losing her vision. She absolutely wanted to see what her daughter would look like as the years go on. So don't ask people to share a video. Ask them to share themselves. By the way, when they do that, they are sharing the video. That's just the practical SEO thing, okay? But like, what really matters is that we give people an opportunity to, again, feel heard and feel seen. Okay, this is like the Truth or Jink, Tony and Sophia video. I don't know if you've seen it. It's another tearjerker. I don't know why I chose all the tearjerkers today, I'm sorry, but the comments are pretty good on it. Everybody connected to this moment in some way. I told you I'm an anthropologist, and my mission in life is to listen to people's stories and to hold those stories up to other stories, and to try to make sense of all the complicated contradictions that all of our stories tell. And the producers and the editors and my colleagues and friends at Cut, we all voraciously read the comments, and we put our favorite ones on a Slack channel. The comments are thus in our minds and in the back of our heads all the time. We're constantly considering and thinking about the commenters. And so in a way, they're kind of like our co-conspirators. They're co-creating the videos with us in slight and subtle ways. And we try to give them things that give them space to comment. So if you look up comments, by the way, in the dictionary, the etymology or the historical development of this word, it comes from Latin, which means to devise with, a co-creation with, people making things together. The act of commenting creates the next version of Cut, and Cut's next video creates the next version of the commenters, and together we create each other. Okay? That's like the last thing all the advertising people want you to hear. This talk was inspired by a project that we had at Cut to compile from 2 million plus comments, our favorite, and then put them into a physical book. A team of 3 of us, one of you is right over there, so sorry that we had to do this, spent hours and hours and hours and hours and weeks reading through every single comment, picking the ones that spoke to us, that sparked joy, and like wading through the hot mess of the comment section for little glimmers of gold. It made us depressed. It drove some of us to drink. Some of us got high before we started collecting those comments. No names will be named. And in the process of cutting and pasting together all of these comments, it like really left this effect on us. We had exposed ourselves to something mildly traumatic, which is a lot of hatred and a lot of violent language. Okay? But yet, when we sequence those comments together, we discover something actually much more hopeful and much more interesting. We see that these lonely commenters are out there in the world. A 14-year-old sitting on her bed in Germany, a 55-year-old grandmother in Brazil, whoever, are throwing these comments out into the void in their own sort of content marketplace. They're also thinking, will people attach themselves or see themselves to my comment, right? We see, once we sequence and juxtapose these comments together in different kinds of ways, the commenters are actually creating their own dialogue, they're creating their own content. These people are helping us rebuild the public sphere. There are not many places in the world where we actually get together and debate and have conversation, right? This is one of the places where we can actually do that. That's why I think we need to take the comments much more seriously. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment. Okay, so I think, let me see how much time we have. Okay, good. I left enough time. So we have time for questions. Did anybody, okay, raise your hand. Okay, I see you. Raise your hand if you left anything with the hashtag. Okay, good, you followed directions. Okay. Hello. Oh, sorry. Oh, that was so stentorian. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, what's your question?
Okay, so I noticed that you're very opinionated on social issues and stuff. So I actually work for a right-wing YouTube personality, and we are always looking for people to come on the show and kind of debate him and do interviews. Would you be up for that kind of thing? Talking to somebody?
Who is that?
Have you heard of Jesse Lee Peterson?
No, I actually don't follow a lot of that stuff. If you couldn't tell. Yeah.
Very right-wing. He's like a big Trump guy.
Oh, sorry, let me just repeat the question for the people that couldn't hear. So he works for a right-wing YouTube channel. He's like asking if I would be interested in coming and debating. You know, I don't know, I do talk a lot, but I don't think I always need to be on camera. I don't know. I could probably think of some really fiery people though. We can talk, we'll talk, yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, okay, so maybe there in the back on this side first, and then you after. Oh yeah, maybe if you could bring in a microphone. So near the other. So yeah, he's right back, almost in the aisle.
Sorry for making you walk that far. I loved everything you talked about, and congrats on making me teary. So your talk seems to be mostly focused on observing comments. I talk a lot about social justice issues and politics, and often what I see in my comments compels me to dive into the discussion. Do you think that either as an individual creator or as a company creator like you guys are, do you have a job to participate in the comments instead of just reading them? And if so, what do you think that job is?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So we don't have a methodology about responding to comments, although sometimes we do respond. We all share access to the account, and one of us anonymously, through the voice of Cut, might comment. I actually wondered about this when I was working on this talk. Like, I think if you can't create your own comment that on its own, as an individual, like if you were devoid, if you didn't have your big YouTube channel's name on it, if you can't create a comment that is compelling, that captures people's attention, and then like tells some kind of insightful truth, then you probably shouldn't be making videos, honestly. And so I do think like it would be an interesting challenge for us to actually consider how to turn the comments into this more interactive, curatorial experience. But yeah, I think about that all the time, and I also think, oh my God, we're so tired. How do we have time for that? But thank you for your question. Okay, there's another question behind, right in the back.
You talked a lot about cultivating the comments section and encouraging people to comment. And I was wondering if you, the channels Cut and the other ones Hi Ho, have any filters turned on, or if you delete any comments, or if you do anything in order to continue that cultivation process of encouraging positive commentary or back and forth dialogue and not just tons of hate messages or spam or bots or things like that.
Yeah, let's see. I think that, okay, we do have some things on the filter, but as you know, no one can keep up with the things that people will say. So, yeah, we do our best to delete as many of the horrible, antagonizing, hateful, violent commentary, knowing that it's a Sisyphean task. It's like rolling a rock up a hill. It will always roll back. I think in my vision of the comments is that all of us comment, and that so many of us comment and have reasoned debate as good faith actors, that those comments, the ones we hate, the trolls, are marginal. They're like punctuation dots in the larger project. And that's the kind of world I would like to see. I don't know how we'll get there though. But yeah, it's hard. It is hard to moderate a comment section. I'll say that. Okay, so there's a question here and then a question here, so that one's closer to her. And we'll come back to you.
Hi, as a creator who is online a lot, and because moderating comment sections can be really, you could fall down a black hole of moderating comments. Do you have any rhythms that you use so that, there's life outside of online?
Oh, is this like a work-life balance question? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just, especially with the content you're creating that's getting so much traction, so many comments. If you start, reading through those, how do you kind of monitor yourself, and when do you stop, or is there some kind of rhythm you have for that for yourself?
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like pouring water out of a sinking ship, because the comments just keep coming in. I don't know. So when we're working on this comments book, and so we actually had to do this practice of reading comments over and over and over again. And in doing that, I think you do develop an intuition for where a comment's going. There are little things you can look for. I hate to make shortcuts, but the length, the kinds of engagement that people are having on it is one indication. But yeah, at some point you really, I don't know, like I was saying, we wanted to become creators to create videos, not to read comments. And I'm suggesting that we should make reading the comments more a part of our daily ritual. But I think it's like yoga or something. If you do it 24 hours a day, you will die. So a little is good. I don't know. Start with the stretching, maybe. Yeah. Okay, and there's a question here, yeah.
Hello, my name is Cuba Cordovans, and I am with Eve's Garden Podcast. We are in our second trimester of having this baby, so it's not out until September 2019. But my question is, first I want to say thank you for everything you shared, and really took a lot in. My question is for once we start and we start getting trolls and everything like that, how do you basically, do you answer back, do you comment, or kind of, what do you just let them be?
Right, yeah. Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I didn't mention this, but if you create, you should protect your own personal information. Yeah, so your address should not be Googleable under any circumstances, because we've made that mistake. You've made that mistake, I know. Yeah, okay, so that aside though, yeah, I would say I actually think it's fun to demonstrate to people, yeah, you might have the most completely opposite view as me, but I will treat you as a good faith actor and have a debate with you and treat you, like your idea has merit but needs to be responded to. That said, a lot of people are not acting in good faith. And don't talk to them. Yeah, just don't talk to them. Don't even acknowledge them. Fuck them. Yeah. Okay, you have a question, I see.
I don't actually have a question. Marina called it over. I was just going to comment on the other one. I think because Chan has alluded to the fact that we have been doxxed. Like,
that's our boss, by the way. He's our CEO. That's Mike.
Yeah, like I, it's not wonderful to get a bunch of voicemails from strangers you've never spoken to who are like telling you like horrible shit because they don't like the video that you made. So like, be very careful about how you like present yourself out in the world. But as far as like responding, we do, and I have. Like early days, I literally read every comment and I answered every single one, and that lasted for like 6 months. Like every single one that actually required a comment. And I remember someone said they watched a video that we did called Sexy Charades, and the video was couples that we asked to, we threw out some name like, and asked them to kind of like do a charade version of that as a sexual position, right? So like I could say 30 minutes on hold with Comcast, and then they would have to like figure out what that means. And then someone wrote a comment and they go, you know, I really love your stuff, but I'm really disappointed in you. Because this feels like, you know, you had a gay couple and you had a lesbian couple, and I feel like you had the lesbian couple do more risky things. And I think you were exploitive. And I responded and I said, well, one, like we didn't have them do any, like the things they did were their choice. And two, the reason why is because they were a married couple. Like you can see, Nina is like 8 months pregnant. The gay couple have been together for literally 2 months at that point. And so they were less comfortable. But just because we didn't mean to be exploitive doesn't mean that we weren't. You know, so like, so being honest with them, like her response was like, holy shit, I can't believe I got like a real response on YouTube. And that's kind of the voice that we want to have when we do and like wade into the comments and talk to people. You know, like I don't want to be a moderator, but like sometimes we're gonna have to dip in and like take off, like Chan said, like the horrible stuff.
I guess if I could just like add one thing to that, it's that when we do actually take the time to respond to people, and even if they're being really aggressive or antagonistic to us, that response is a workshop for you, and like you're workshopping your argument for your next episode, right? And like think of it like practice. That's like, or just a way to get to know your audience. Yeah. Okay, so I think I see another hand. There's a hand here and a hand here. They're both on the aisle.
Hi, thank you so much. I have to say, between your talk and Mike's, like some of the 2 best hours of the conference so far. Although I am a big cut fan, so I'm what do you say to the people who criticize the comment section as fueling hate, animosity, and cowardice because of its inherent anonymity, and that unlike other cultural artifacts of the past where we had to sign our name, that this is actually propagating some of the problems in society today?
Right, yeah, okay, there's a wonderful, if you're like into reading this kind of stuff, there's a wonderful report that came out from an organization called Data and Society that actually tracks the evolution of the alt-right and extremism and like even further fringe components on YouTube. Yeah, and people are doing a lot of scholarship and research about this right now. I think, yeah, like YouTube has this problem, and its suggestion algorithm, I think, is a big culprit. Places like 4chan is sort of the laboratory in which this was developed, this kind of discourse. Yeah, again, so like I think my utopian rosy dream would be that all of us, instead of discarding that place where those trolls, or those bad faith actors, or those hate comments are, is to just repopulate it with our own content and our own comments. And like, what if the mission was we all had to comment all the time? We had to write 3 comments a day that earnestly respond to this problem or this issue or whatever, even if we disagree, but demonstrate for each other and for the world that we can actually have real discourse. And again, marginalize that stuff that is just toxic hatred. Yeah, and I do think that some organizations and corporations have a responsibility to monitor that stuff, mainly YouTube. So, yeah.
Hi. So my question was, you were talking about stimulating conversation with your video, like making your video into a question. My one confusion about that is that maybe a video like your 100 years of fashion in Iran or 100 years of beauty might not like explicitly stimulate conversation because you're really only just showing the images, and it's not like you're not explicitly saying, hey, let's talk about this in your video. So how do you avoid maybe everybody just saying, oh, that's pretty and leaving?
Well, it's funny actually. So my interest in 100 Years of Beauty and why I stuck with it for so long, I think, is that it is purely visual, and that like other kinds of texts out there in the world, like the text can be debated and argued with. Like people will use buzzwords and jargon, and people will be alienated by language and conversation. And what I love about this question though is it reminds us that actually like responding to an image or another sense altogether requires us to go into the reservoirs of our mind and generate language of our own, right? So when you look at this image, you actually have to think for yourself and come to your own conclusion. And I think we need, we need that balance. We do make a lot of talky stuff, but we need things that aren't talky, that still somehow inspire people. I think the moment in the 100 Years of Beauty Iran video is where Sabrina is like in the 60s and she's like a little hippie and she's groovy, and then suddenly she's wearing the full body chador. And the first question that algorithmically floats to the top is what happened in 1979? And then that's where the discussion took place. So I wouldn't discount that actually the visual and the image can't be a question. I actually, as a visual anthropologist, I'm like really obsessed with that idea. Yeah, good question. Hey, anybody else? Hey, there's one right there.
So one thing I've been hearing a lot about at Vidcon is maybe newer features like live streaming, which comes with live chats, which is sort of an analog to comments. I'm wondering if you've given that any thought and have any ideas about how promising that is for some of the things you mentioned here.
Yeah. Okay, you guys just did a live stream that I like hid from because I didn't want to be on it. How'd it go? Good. I don't understand like how you can possibly read. One person can't read all of that. If you have like 9 million subscribers, you can't read all of that text as you're doing your live feed and then like try to have some connection with people. I don't know, like I think I love emerging genres, emerging formats because it gives us problems to solve and opportunities. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I have no idea. I really don't know. That's because I'm always hiding from the live streams. I think that's why. Okay, I'll let you know if I think about it. Okay, anybody else? Any last questions? You have another one? Just go for it. We're only here like once, so yeah.
What exactly, because I've heard it used in two separate ways, monetizing. Because I've heard some YouTubers say, all right, monetizers, get on them, and I've also heard it on another way where it's like branding in a way.
Oh, are you talking about like sponsorships?
About two different things.
Yeah, okay, so maybe a way to think about this is capitalism. And in capitalism, nothing is secure. So the advertising market on YouTube will change. You may get demonetized. It will come out of the blue. You'll have no warning, okay? And so that's why a lot of creators out there diversify their portfolio and their revenue streams by getting outside sponsorships. So if someone pays you directly to do something in your channel or use your audience in some way, yeah. So. That was like a businessy question, which I'm not in charge of it, so I don't really know any of that. Okay, anything else? Well, I just want to say one more thing. Like, that's my contact. I am actually interested in talking to any and all of you. So hit me up if you have any questions or if you want to chat. Thank you so much. Good luck on your channels, everybody.